So I had a very rude awakening when I first got an STD.
Am I even having sex for pleasure? Like,
I think anybody's at risk of contracting HIV, honestly.
When I think of sex, would be intimacy,
pleasure,
lust,
Fun.
freedom, trust,
Power.
and honesty.
It is important to talk to our young girls about sex. It's important to talk to them about the importance of getting tested for HIV and STIs, and it's important to let them know that they have the right and the responsibility to protect themselves. The best thing that we can do for our young girls is to empower them in their sexual health, empower them to do what is best for them and to make positive choices.
About your attitudes about sex, or the way you view sex, the way you think about sex?
Honestly, I don't know a lot about sex as of right now. Even though I'm like 26 years old, I don't know a lot about like sex unless you like see what's on TV and like your girlfriends basically.
The things my mother taught me about sex, she had a whole sex book. She pulled it out one day. It was me, my niece, my cousin. She pulled it out one day. We learned about the boys' private parts, what they supposed to look like, what they not supposed to look like. Girls' private parts, what they supposed to look like, what they not supposed to look like. Periods, I had to get a whole period little baggie that she gave me. It was a lot at one time. It was kind of overwhelming because I was young. I'm like, I don't even know what sex is. This is not exciting to me. The penises was looking weird, vaginas was looking weird. Like, it was a lot at one time.
Some friends had snuck pornography from their parents' house. And we were at this called Carver Center, and we would gather there after school or whatever, and I saw pornography. And that had to be maybe 5th, 6th grade. Yep.
I definitely talked to my mother about sex often. She painted this picture that was glorious about sex. I couldn't wait to explore what sex was like. She definitely explained to me about orgasms and everything quite young. I'm not sure what the proper age is, but I don't know. I don't ever remember not knowing what sex was, to be honest.
I was young. I grew up in church, but my mother was open about sex. So I would say probably middle school. And we had a girl my 8th grade year who was pregnant, and I was just like, oh my goodness. So I had a lot of questions. I think that's probably when it hit me that it can affect me.
So my mom was very adamant about teaching us about sex. She was a teenage mom, and her mom didn't really talk to her about sex at all. So she made sure that we understood the mechanics of sex and the consequences of sex. So we went to the library often as a family, and she would always check us out books on menstrual periods, human anatomy, and just so I learned about sex in a technical way, not necessarily from an emotional standpoint.
My attitude with sex did change with age. I feel that the older I got, I looked at it completely different. Like when you're younger, it's just all about the quick sexual gratification you get out of it. Now as an adult, I look at it as a more intimate way of connecting with your partner, and I value it more. I hate to say this, but when you're younger, you're more free with giving it up. And as an adult, nah, not everyone deserves your gift. And I feel like it is a gift that you're sharing with someone else, because it gets deep.
oh, most definitely. I will definitely say that the HIV test is probably the most nerve-wracking. For whatever reason, obviously there are other STDs and STIs that are, can stay with you. But for whatever reason, it's that HIV testing that's just like the most heart-pumping, waiting on those results. So
I had a very rude awakening when I first got an STD. And so my thoughts on sex kind of changed because I didn't realize how an STD could really damage you. And you know, starting that conversation with other people was really uncomfortable. So sex became kind of weird in my early 20s. But as I got older, I started to explore more, and the way I view it now, I think it's an amazing thing that should be shared with somebody that you really care about, and it could be a lot of fun.
The first conversation I can actually remember about sex was probably in the 6th grade, and it was a group of friends. We were at a party supply store shopping for one of my friends' Halloween parties with her mom. And they had these like bouncy balls that stretched. And this particular friend was the only one of us who had ever had sex at that point. And so we were all like, well, what does a penis feel like? And so she took this bouncy ball and she stretched it over her thumb and had us all squeeze it. And she was like, that's what a penis feels like. So that's the first conversation I can actually remember having about sex.
Yes, from being a molested kid to having sex, being peer pressured into it, and then being an adult having sex, like there's like so many different stages. Like there was like fear, then there was like I need to keep up with everyone else because then I wouldn't be like I don't want to say like the it girl or I'm like lame or whatever, you know, I'm not in that crowd. And then it's like when you're an adult, you know, everyone's doing it, right? So it's like, okay, well, I guess it's just okay. So,
you know, when people talk about like STDs and stuff like that, in Africa actually, when you go to the hospital, the first thing that they test you for is HIV because it's especially Central Africa. A lot of people do have HIV down there, so it's a better risk. Compared to here, I'm a little bit more, I would say I'm not as careful, but I try to be. But back home, you have to be vigilant like all the time before you like get into like a sexual relationship with anybody, because one in everybody, I don't want to say statistically, but like 1 in 10 people do have HIV down there.
I do not think my religious beliefs contradict my thoughts on sex, because I do think like my body is a temple of God, and everybody shouldn't have access to me or my energy and things like that. Do I feel like I will go to hell because I had sex before marriage? No, I do not. But like far as like sex being a serious thing, probably that piece, yeah.
Yes, it actually did play a role because I was a PK, so I was a little sneaky and observative.
What's a PK?
Preacher's kid. Okay.
So I have an interesting background in that I was raised by my paternal grandparents. And so my grandmother, I won't say we were super religious, but she was super old school. So her teachings were sex is bad, don't have it, boys are bad. And as an adult, I look back and realize she made me feel like I was wrong for the feelings I had. So I probably would have had taken a different journey had we been able to discuss it, and for me to be told that my feelings are normal, but here's a proper way to process through those feelings. So it was like oral sex, you know, only whores participate in oral sex. Don't have sex until you get married. Basically, it's your marital duty. So it's not even for enjoyment really, it's for procreation and to be married. You know, all those boxes. That's what I was taught growing up.
So my mom, she was born and raised in Chicago. So I had kind of like a hood mom, but a preacher dad. So their views on sex was very different. My mom was always open and honest. I'm the only child. So she was always open and honest versus my dad, you know, telling me to wait and didn't really want to talk about it too much. I guess I would say he was uncomfortable about talking about sex.
I do believe that I'm at risk for contracting HIV because in my generation, everybody's just having sex with everybody. You really don't know anybody's status or like who they're sleeping with, who they're doing it with, what they're doing. So yeah, it's kind of scary.
I don't feel like I was at risk, although everyone is always at risk, but it's all about the steps that you take to protect yourself and making sure that you get properly tested and make sure you have open communication with the person you're being sexually active with. But that's what made me feel, I'm not gonna say comfortable, but not to the point where I felt like I could contract it, because I always made sure I protected myself.
I think anybody's at risk of contracting HIV, honestly. You could do everything right, use condoms, and that one time you trust a person, and then boom, that'll be the time it happens.
He's like, I didn't know anything about STDs like that until I was older. Well, high school, probably high school, college. But it was just don't have sex.
So when I think about HIV now, I think about it in the same way that I view any other sexually transmitted disease. But when I was younger, HIV wasn't talked about in the same way that other STDs were. And so even in sex ed, when they were teaching us about chlamydia and gonorrhea and syphilis, HIV wasn't even really brought up. And so it wasn't a thing that you thought about at all. Like, I can honestly say I was probably more concerned about contracting chlamydia than I was about ever having contracted HIV.
I just signed up for PrEP, so I'm really excited about that. So I feel very confident now that I will not contract HIV, but before I got on PrEP, definitely was definitely a concern for me. Constantly wanted to make sure that I was getting tested.
So talk to me about what PrEP is.
PrEP is kind of like this miraculous pill that basically protects you from HIV. You take it every day, just like birth control. And I am super excited about it because, I was a little skeptical at first because I'm like, this can't be real. This cannot be this good. But no, it's a real live, highly effective pill that will make me feel a lot safer in my sex practices. I feel like I'm invincible almost out here. It's probably not a good thing, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. So yeah, I'm excited.
When you think about HIV, do you think about it in the same way that you view other STDs?
Yeah, I feel like all STDs are the same. Some are curable, some are not, but I feel like they should all be taken seriously, and they scary.
I feel like sex is a very beautiful thing. It's something that can be enjoyed when done properly and being safe. When you're safe and you're taking all the precautions that you need to take, whether it's being tested, using condoms, whatever it may be, I feel like you're able to open up more.
That people need to talk to their kids more, like, about sex, instead of like shaming them for it. Like, bro, you were horny at 13, like, that's fine. You don't have to make them feel bad about wanting to do it, but be realistic. Your kid is having sex. If you feel like they need to be on birth control, have the conversation. Like, let them know that sex is supposed to be a good thing. And if you're gonna do it, then you need to be safe. If you need to go get tested, let me know so we can go get you tested.
I have to remind myself intentionally, it's okay to enjoy. It's okay to be free. It's okay to explore. You're not nasty. This is not nasty. So yeah, I would say that, and not necessarily my religious views so much, but the voice of my grandmother in the back of my head.
I think all parents should be open. You have to realize that today's society is totally different from when we was growing up. And even though, like, I do not feel 39, I know I don't look it. I'm open with my daughter. I'm open with her friends. I let them know that this is a safe place. It's not a nasty thing. If this is how you feel, we experiment with everything else, liquor, drugs, different foods. You tell your kids, get out here and try new things. that may be something that they want to try. And just hearing from you like, oh, it's negative, or you're putting, I don't know, it turns it into a negative thing when it's really, when you having sex with the right person, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
I'm really excited about what life is going to be like on PrEP. I mean, because that was a big fear for a while, and a big part of my sex life was, don't get HIV. That's the one. You really don't want that one. But I'm pansexual, so it makes perfect sense. The kind of people that I want to mess around with are in that lifestyle where, you know, I know it's more prominent in, you know, like gay men, but sometimes I like gay men. So I need PrEP, you know, I'm in their world, I'm gonna have to do what they do.
I've had sex for many reasons. You know, I used to escort, so I've done it just, you know, just to do it. I don't know if you ever, you know, you're not supposed to be doing it, but you do it anyways. I've had one night stands. But now, like I said, in my age now, I'm just picky, and I really don't have sex too much now, because I've been there, done that.
It's nerve-wracking. It can be. I practice safe sex, but once a lover and I decide that we're just monogamous, the two of us, I've not always had used condoms. So even then, you still, you know, I'm not one of those that's getting ready to go look for stuff, but you never know what somebody else is doing when they're not with you. So that is a risk that you do take.
I make sure that all my partners know, like, I take my health very seriously. And that, you know, I'm asking when they got tested last. I want to know, I'm checking stuff out beforehand, you know, whether they know it or not, I'm checking because I just know too much about STIs and STDs to just act like it's not there.
I do discuss STDs with my partner now. Partners before, you know how you always have that, you have some people that you can just talk to, right? And you just have that connection like, hey, have you ever been tested, or when was the last time you've been tested? You can have that conversation.
When you were doing sex work, were you getting HIV and STI tested frequently?
Yes, I actually went every 30 days. I would come back home weekends, sometimes, or during the week, because I made enough money to be able to travel back and forth. So I definitely got tested. And I won't say it would be every 30 days all the time, but definitely within that 3-month period, I would definitely get tested. So.
And men pay more for condomless sex, right?
Right, yes, they do. Honestly, as I look back at everything, I honestly don't know how I made so much money. Because I was very picky. Like, I had a lot of restrictions. I didn't do girlfriend experience. I wouldn't let men go down on me. I only gave oral with a condom. But honestly, I made a lot of money at it, you know, sometimes more than my friends.
There's definitely a double standard when it comes to women in sex. We can't be open and free and do things that men do. It's looked and shamed upon for us to do. But I think that sex is a freeing type of act, and obviously we all need to protect ourselves.
I really don't think it should be called a hoe phase. I think that it should be called like an experimental period or an exploratory period. Because once again, that puts a negative stigma on sex. Sex is not meant to be a negative thing.
You can't hide anything after sex. I can see you clearly. The day after we have sex, our relationship has changed.
I'm not going through another hoe phase, right? I'm not of age, not knocking it, however many hoe phases you want, right? But for me, I don't want to have any more meaningless sex. It doesn't have to be a relationship per se, traditional relationship, but you gotta mean something to me, I gotta mean something to you. And it has to be a trust and a level of transparency and intimacy that surpasses the actual act of sex. So, you know, that's few and far between. So I'm selective.
So when I think about good sex, I honestly think about poetry in motion. Sex is like sex is like music. It's like making music. It's like a duet. You know, I'm on the piano, you're on the bass. I'm following your cadence. I'm following where your next note is going. I'm making eye contact with you, so I know the way you hit that last note, you're really not feeling what I did, so let me try something new this next time. I think it's beautiful. I think it's art. I think it's poetic.
And intimacy doesn't even have to be sexual. So if you are engaged with your partner and you just listen to their body, you listen to their soul, their mind, their spirit, like it'll be a good sexual experience. But people that just do it for them and don't care if their partner had a pleasurable experience, I would say that's bad sex.
Bad sex to me is, how can I put it? I don't like to be, how can I put this? So I guess I see it different ways. If we're talking about sexually, I don't like to be rough handled. I'm a very gentle person. So if someone is rough with me, that's automatically a turn off. Or I'm very dominant. So I want to be the one to be like, hey, let me get there. If you pressure me about it or try to, just keep bugging me, it's a turn off automatically.
To make me just feel like I'm whole and I'm complete, I feel good. I can just let all my flaws out and I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? And they're okay with it. They're loving on it. They're kissing this part, my scars, you know what I mean? Because I try to hide my scars a lot. So that, the person that has that bad sex, they're not going to do any of that. They're going to just bang it. It's a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. A person who talks about their private areas a lot, and then when you get in the bedroom and they do not match anything that they were just talking about.
Not having proper knowledge of female anatomy could make sex bad. I think that you need to be well versed on what hole is where and what can go in what hole and the order in which it can.
So it sounds like sex is empowering for you.
Yeah, it is. I don't think a lot of people feel empowered sexually. They think of it as like taboo or, oh, I don't want to do this because that's nasty.
And I feel like there is nothing wrong with having a lot of good sex, especially if you're having it with one person and you're protecting yourself and you both are taking the steps that you need to take to protect each other. Go ahead, have a lot of it, enjoy it. Life is too short.
Wait if you can. Your yoni is very precious.
Have you ever practiced celibacy? I think you said earlier that you're
Yes.
currently practicing celibacy.
Yes.
How's that going for you?
It's going. it's not, it's nothing consciously you do. You just, I'm just celibate.
Yes, I have. Once. No, twice, I'm not gonna lie. So the first time I had sex, I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to hell. Can't nobody know about this type of stuff. So it was a whole year. Y'all, I was like, I'm not gonna do this.
At this point in my life, sex is primarily about pleasure and connecting with someone on a deeper level and about true intimacy. But there were points in my life where sex was a means of control. And it went beyond feeling empowered, like I felt powerful.
Want to wait for the right person. I'm not saying it has to be till marriage, but it's so many emotions and things that come with sex, and there's soul ties involved, and you just want to make sure that whoever you do give your self to, that they have your best interest at heart, and that's, you know, who you ultimately want to be tied to.
Even during sex, if it no longer feels safe, if it no longer feels good, I get to say no. And so those are things that I think growing up, I didn't have those tools. So even now it feels awkward, but I'm practicing it. Like, I get to say, but I also get to own my choices. So I can't blame a man for breaking my heart, especially if he told me who he is, right? Or showed me who he is. I can't blame a man for even giving me an STD if I decided I'm gonna let you enter my body unprotected. I gotta own those choices. Those are the responsibilities that come with sex. So the freedom of it, the pleasure of it, but finding the balance, it's a responsibility.
I have a friend, she's not really into like masturbation a lot. She doesn't really do it. I'm like, you need to do that. Love yourself so you can know how you want other people to love you in that way. It'll be better.
I have sex because not only do I enjoy it, I do like the power that comes from it. As a woman, as a Black woman, I feel very powerful when I have sex.
I do feel like being over-sexualized women on a daily basis. Like, everything is so sexual with anything, any conversations when they first meet you. Hey, you look good, you know, look at your butt. And I mean, just everything is, they don't say, you know, your mind is intelligent, you know, or we having this intellectual conversation. We don't do anything. It's always sexual, you know.
See, as far as the STDs go too, you can go years, you can go your whole life. Some people have never had any, some people have. And that doesn't make the person who got the STD a bad person, a nasty person.
Like, it's fine for you to want to, you know, keep your virginity, make it something special. But like, losing your virginity sucks. It's not gonna be special.
Making your own choice to have sex or not to have sex, or who you want to have sex with, without listening to other people or allowing people to manipulate you into being or doing something that you wouldn't want to do.
My mom never made me feel bad or negative about sex. And I think too many people view sex as a taboo, bad thing. I think it can be a glorious thing that in some instances, even a religious thing. It can really bring out the spirituality in a person. You can reach very high levels of ecstasy once you let down your walls and really open up and communicate with your partners. It can really bring an entire new conversation to the table. I mean, can you imagine in breakfast? Like, you know what I did with that finger thing I did last night? What'd you think?
You're damaged goods, because you're not. It's just sex. It's gonna happen either way. Maybe younger, maybe older, but it's gonna happen. You're not gonna lose value because you're not a virgin at 15. It's okay.
So ideally, I'm a relationship girl trying to navigate how to date and be single and on my own, grown kids for the first time in my life, and be sexually free, or explore that, or find someone who will allow me the safe space to explore that.
Yeah, so a lot of my younger cousins always come to me to talk about sex because sexual health education is what I do for a living. And so the one thing I always tell them is what I just stated before: don't do anything that makes you uncomfortable. Always make sure that you feel safe. If you're with someone and you can't communicate with them what it is that you need and desire, then you probably shouldn't be sleeping with that person. Protecting yourself and doing what is best for you has to be paramount, even above that person's feelings or connecting with that person or making that person feel loved and wanted. You have to first make sure that you are loving yourself and doing what it is that you need for you first.
Do it in the bedroom and then never discuss it again. We need to talk about it. We need to make it a conversation as a civilization because we're all doing it, you know, so why not discuss it? Why is it such a private thing always, and why is it used to make people feel bad about who they are just because of some of the things that they may like? So if there was anything that I would want to tell anybody is, you know, own it, you know, and don't be afraid to embrace it.
Today is National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, a day to address the impact of HIV on women and girls and to celebrate those that are living and thriving with HIV. When we reduce HIV stigma and promote testing, prevention, education, and treatment for women, we can help reduce the number of new infections. In the United States, 1 in 5 of every HIV diagnosis is a woman. Over half of those are Black women. Black women are especially disproportionately impacted by HIV due to both racial and gender bias. We're not talking about our sexual health. We're not talking about how we have sex, and we are not talking about who we have sex with. 85% of women living with HIV contracted it through heterosexual sex, an act that most of the women in this film have engaged in. It's obvious that not talking about it is not preventing it, so it is time that we open our minds and our mouths and we talk about sex. Talk about it with your friends, talk about it with your kids, talk about it with your partners, but start talking about it. Nothing is fixed until it is brought to the light. If you're concerned about your sexual health, if you have questions or you would like to get tested, visit our website at buwellness.org.